Hello Internet, my name is Kiri Callaghan and you're watching Kiriosity, the vlog where we nerd out on geek culture. We delve, we examine, we investigate, we basically pull a Sherlock. Sometimes we have a case, but most of the time we're just too damn curious.
We're curious.
Today's particular case is a bit of a creepy crawly one. I was playing Dragon Age 2 for probably about the fourth time. Yes! I've played Dragon Age 2 4 times. I love fantasy games.
Put a pin in that.
So if I haven't played your favorite game yet, I'm really sorry.
I really want to.
And I asked myself the question that every fantasy RPG player will at some point in their life. Why are there always giant freaking spiders? They are everywhere.
Why?
Like, regardless what game you play, you could play Dragon Age. Yes, Dragon Age has them, but it's also in D&D, it's in Magic the Gathering, it's in Neverwinter Nights, Zelda, Ocarina of Time. It was like the first big boss you battled. Why? Seriously, it's like a tiny John Peters is just lurking in the back of all these developers' minds.
Did he tell you about the spider?
Yeah, did she tell you guys about the spider?
Every day with a freaking spider.
So, being me, I decided to investigate. Now, spiders have always been a source of fear for humanity. Arachnophobia is reportedly the #1 most common phobia. Arachnophobia is a learned behavior. At some point when you were younger, you were with an adult, so someone you thought was completely fearless saw this tiny little crawly thing that you wouldn't have thought anything else about, and they freaked out. And so something in your brain went, aha, that is something to fear. Now, while that may be true, I feel there is some sort of basis in the innate idea of that we're scared of things as human beings that we can't necessarily see. Like a big predator, let's say like a lion, you can see it in the distance. You don't know when a spider is gonna come towards you, and that just inspires fear in us, and the only thing we really have on them is that we're bigger. So what happens when that one factor is gone? So let's investigate a little bit more. It is interesting to note that it does seem like this fear is only centralized in European and Western culture. In various Native American cultures, the spider played a role in the creation myth. In one particular myth, Grandmother Spider even used a clay pot and her web to draw the sun across the sky. In African mythology, Anansi the spider was not just a personification of a creation deity, he was kind of a trickster, though benevolent. And in Egypt, spiders were associated with Neith in her aspect of spinning and weaving destiny. Do you think it's because of the beauty and complexity of a spider's web that these cultures think of them like that, as builders? Because it is interesting to note that it seems Western and European culture seems to be the only people who don't regard spiders as benevolent in their myths. I don't know, what do you guys think? Spider-Man was probably one of the first times in Western culture where a spider was a good thing. Wonder why that is.
Do you know?
In the 19th century, we discovered dire wolves. Dire coming from the Latin dirus, which means terrible and ominous and just bad. The thing is, before we knew dire wolves existed, we had a fear of giant wolves. So we kind of have a track record of taking something that we're already afraid of and blowing it up to something bigger as if to justify being afraid of that thing in the first place. One of the first examples of giant spiders in literature was Lord Dunsany's short story, The Fortress Unvanquishable Save for Saknoth. Saknoth sounds vaguely Klingon.
Saknoth! Honor.
This story was pre-proto-fantasy in that it had giant spiders and a legendary sword. However, due to Dunsany's upbringing, it was also heavily steeped in Christianity. The spider was seen as laying a trap for the hero and essentially a symbol of the devil. What's interesting about that is where you have these other cultures who saw the web as this beautiful, intricate thing that spiders build, where Western culture focused on the fact that that web is built to capture food, paralyze them, and then eat them and suck up their like tiny little vampires. So it's two aspects of really the same thing that two cultures saw entirely differently. And both of them are right, or at least none of them are wrong. And this brings us to the wonderful J.R.R. Tolkien, to the J.R.R. who in 1937 published his version of The Hobbit. If you are not familiar, in the Forest of Mirkwood, Bilbo and the dwarves get attacked by giant spiders and are nearly eaten if it wasn't for the ring and the sword. What's really interesting about this, though completely unrelated, is a year after the publication of The Hobbit marks the first recorded sighting of a Jabba Fofi, giant freaking spider, in the Congo. They're considered to be cryptids, which are essentially creatures that there have been lots of sightings of or records of, but are not scientifically proven to exist yet, such as Sasquatch and Yetis and awesome things like that. I'm not claiming that Bigfoot and the Yeti and Jabba Fofi are real. I am very agnostic about monsters. Like, I believe the guy who saw it in the Congo described it being the size of his Jeep Also, his name was Reginald. So clearly, white guy afraid of spiders. So either they're real, and I'm not saying they are, and we're really good at being afraid of things that we don't know exist yet, or something about the 20th century made us afraid of giant spiders. I don't know what. Do you guys have any theories? Was it Spider Hitler? And then Tolkien came out with Lord of the Rings, which included Shelob. Shelob is what we think of when we think of giant frickin' spider. She was huge, and I don't just mean that in size-wise. I mean, she had a huge prelude sort of going up to finally meeting her.
Let her do it. What's it talking about, precious? I'm talking about Shelob, dummy. This is for the spider episode. Oh, right. I'm not actually Gollum. I'm a Kiri.
She had a build-up. Gollum was freaking scared of her, and Gollum ate orcs. I'm hungry. Because of Tolkien, even without all this other stuff, we probably would have remembered giant spiders anyway. Tolkien really was the benchmark for fantasy in general, because Tolkien himself was literature. But from him, all five fantasy girl. Tolkien really was the precursor to all fantasy. For instance, dwarves. Dwarves already existed in Norse and Germanic mythology, but they were earth spirits. Not only did Tolkien make them a race, which is emulated, he gave the females beards, which is emulated. You see it in EverQuest, you saw it in Discworld, you saw it in older versions of Dungeons and Dragons, and I think Dragonlance? Lots of stuff. And that was all because Tolkien did it once. And he did the same thing with spiders, which we were already afraid of. So Tolkien's Shelob is not just how afraid we can be of spiders, it's how afraid we want to be of spiders. And that's the thing about fantasy. It's really the only genre where you get giant personifications of both your ambitions and your fears. And I get you now! So you want to help people? You save the world. So you're afraid of spiders? Giant frickin' spider! Fantasy often gets overlooked because it tends to feel more primitive, but it's really the only genre we have that can tap into that more primitive side. This did not happen in the movie or books! So sometimes fantasy is popular in movies and sometimes it's not, but fantasy always seems to be a staple in video games. Because video games tap into our primitive side just like fantasy. So that is why giant spiders are in all of my video games. Because I am a fantasy fan and I play video games. Plus programmers probably really like using them because we already know what they are and we're already afraid of them. Plus it's gotta be really fun to animate like all those 8 little legs coming after your guy. I should have started with that. Forget everything I said. No. Because that doesn't apply to D&D or Magic the Gathering. We're still good. So spiders are still cool and super scary. You, on the other hand, may have an entirely different perspective. So what do you think? What do you think about our fear of spiders? What do you think about us making them giant? What do you think of our ambigification of our ambitions and fears in fantasy?
Yes.
Aha! So share your thoughts and knowledge in the comments below or in the Geek and Sundry forums. You may know something that I haven't shared here or that no one else here has heard before. And that's kind of what this vlog is all about. So I'll see you guys next time and stay curious.